Ooh, where are we?
Beautiful, slightly less warm, just as sunny Las Vegas.
That is correct. Pro Tour Final Fantasy is what you are watching right now. We thank you so much for joining us. MagicCon Las Vegas, the biggest MagicCon of all time. As we wind down through this tournament and this weekend's event, there is another MagicCon coming in Atlanta very soon, so we hope to see you there if you couldn't make it here this weekend. But again, we do thank you for joining us here this weekend if you're watching from home. It's Pro Tour Final Fantasy. Cedric Phillips, Monty DeVuti. We are going to crown a champion here soon enough, but we have to go through a couple more rounds before somebody gets to hoist a beautiful trophy. And it's going to be a mono red mirror that we're going to turn our attention to, because on one side of the bracket, we've got Is It Prowess. On the other, we have mono red. You do see that Ken Yukihiro won his mono red mirror match over Andy Garcia Romo. And then we just watched Tony Portolan win the Is It Prowess mirror against David Rude, which means we're going to turn our attention back to red. Yuchen Liu, Percy Fang. You see both of them with a single top finish and identical records, also playing very identical decks in mono red. Money, we both know this one's going to be quick. Given the matchup, the question is, who do you think's going to win?
Yeah, it's interesting because Yuchen Liu is on a streak of top 8s, top 8'd previously in Chicago at Pro Tour Ether Drift, also playing mono red, so very well accomplished. One of the big things that I notice in his deck here is only 3 Mage Bane Wizards, so sacrifice against prowess, but in the red mirror, that's a big help, and 3 copies of Opera Love Song. One of the things that can happen in this mirror, of course, is that things slow down because creatures are trading or because you are using your removal, so having access to some extra card advantage or that big burst of damage can be a bit of a mirror breaker. On the other hand, though, I have to say, at the moment, Percy Fang might be the scariest Magic player in the world with mountains in his hand. In 3 events, one of which was Pioneer, with mono red, he has earned 3 World Championship invites.
Triple Q'd.
With his lowest finish so far being 2nd in those previous 2 events. So I don't know, at this point, I really cannot go against him when he has these mountains in his hand. He's got a lot of mountains in his hands.
A lot of mountains in the hand, a lot of mountains in the deck, and you see a very straightforward sideboard here of 4, 4, 3, 3, and 1 Twin Maw Stormblade just for fun. Mono red mirror, as we mentioned, is a pretty quick one here. It's that mice package that we know and love from Bloomborough, excuse me. We're going to see plenty of that here, which means the games go by pretty quickly. And don't forget that Screaming Nemesis does work itself into the equation in very unique ways. Game number 1 is, of course, where we are going to start.
Charlie ready for game 1.
And if you like mountains, you have come to the right place. Yuchen Liu on 6, Percy Fang on 7, and Percy on the play. It is going to be a hired claw on this day to get this quarterfinal started.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a decent amount of trading resources when possible between these players, but the big question at any given point is who is going to be able to play a creature and have it go unanswered or deal damage multiple times. And Yuchen does have a copy of Screaming Nemesis in hand. That is going to be one of the best cards in the mirror match here in terms of these mid-game positions where you may have to play defensive, getting down a Screaming Nemesis and ensuring your opponent can't remove it easily without losing a creature or taking some damage in the exchange is a very nice feeling.
It'll be a hired claw here from Yuchen. For Percy, it was just a Monumental Swift Spear and an attack.
Yeah, Swift Spear for Percy is one of the unique choices between the 2 decks, where Yuchen does have those Opera Love Songs. Percy has actually gotten more aggressive, including 2 copies of Swift Spear in the deck to Yuchen's 0.
We'll see what comes up next here for Percy on the 3rd turn.
Yeah, there is also a question when we're comparing these resources is who has drawn what. So one of the things that we see from Percy right now that gives him a slight edge is a copy of Rockface Village in the land area where Yuchen only has access to mountains currently.
Okay, a couple of Burst Lightnings we're going to exchange with Monstrous Rage and a Hired Claw. So a little bit of a 2 for 2 and, of course, 2 Prowess triggers. And now there's another copy of Hired Claw, and Percy will pass the turn back. So we're going to head back Yuchen Liu's way.
Yeah, I would not be shocked, given the current situation, to see a Screaming Nemesis on defense and just saying go.
Yeah, that's exactly what you are going to see. So we're going to head back over to Percy. Screaming Nemesis, the 3-mana 3/3 haste. Whenever it's dealt damage, it deals that much damage to any other target, and if a player is dealt damage this way, they can't gain life for the rest of the game. It is a very, very powerful 3-mana spell in these mono-red strategies.
Yeah, it is definitely a terrifying card to play against, but it is also a card that just has the ability to completely blank this board.
One good Screaming Nemesis deserves another, so that's what Percy has played. They're both sitting back on defense a little bit here, so we're going to head back Percy's way. Now, of course, Percy doesn't know the contents of Yuchen's hand right now. There's a little bit of flooding taking place right now for the mono-red player, and Percy only on 3 lands and looks happy to send in a Screaming Nemesis.
Yeah, Percy definitely the aggressor here with more creatures on the battlefield, forcing Yuchen to potentially take a trade here where Percy is going to get the can't gain life emblem online. Not that relevant in this matchup. There's not much life gain to be found, but this does help clear off the board a bit, which Yuchen is okay with. I think the big thing right now for Yuchen is he's hoping to find one of those copies of Opera Love Song that he has access to, because that will do a good job of restabilizing this game, given how much mana he has access to.
See the life totals here, 20-16 in favor of Fang. Now this is going to be an Emberheart Challenger that's on defense. So we're going to head back Percy's way.
Yeah, there was a joke from Percy there, I believe, about hard casting Twin Maw Stormbrood. That is a creature that gains life. I don't believe there is any white mana in this deck to speak of.
No.
But that is one of the cards that Yuchen does have access to in his deck, is one of, is the Stormbrood. You know, for the charring bite side of the Omen rather than the dragon itself.
Here is an Emberheart Challenger for Percy.
Yeah, and Percy has the stronger challenger here, as he has the Rockface Village to trigger it, and we see that Yuchen does not. So it is very much going to be a lot of stalling back and forth at the moment, while Percy uses the repeatable resources he has that Yuchen doesn't have access to.
I'm going to head back Percy's way now. You mentioned that Rockface Village, and there it is. Going to reveal a copy of Heartfire Hero. And the Mouse Soldier may be making its way onto the battlefield, and it does. And we have seen this one quite a bit. When Heartfire Hero becomes the target of a spell or ability you control for the first time each turn, put a +1/+1 counter on it. And when Heartfire Hero dies, it deals damage equal to its power to each opponent.
Yeah, best draws for Yuchen right now would be a Manifold Mouse or even a Rockface Village, just something to start targeting this Emberheart Challenger and getting some value out of it, because otherwise, if the game continues on in this direction, you can see that Percy now essentially has a Pseudo-Phyrexian Arena every turn in order to get access to an extra card. And
combat,
you know,
target
way back at the start of this game, I said it's going to be about trading resources. Well, now you're not running out of resources.
No, not at all. Not at all. As here comes the Heartfire Hero. It's a little bit larger now.
I believe has double strike.
And this is the mice package is complete. Manifold Mouse, Heartfire Hero, and Emberheart Challenger, providing a little bit of card advantage along the way.
Nemesis, not a bad draw. Of course, you take it. But one thing that we do have to be wary of as well in this situation is that with 2 Magebane Lizards, one of the outs that Yuchen has from this flooded situation, the Opera Love Song, is already pretty close to uncastable, but very much headed there, if not already there.
Well, you land there for Percy off of the Manifold Mouse trigger via the Rockface Village.
Yeah, Percy doing the math of, can I attack here? Can give double strike to the Heartfire Hero and attack with it, and Yuchen will likely be forced to just block with the Screaming Nemesis and hope there's no Monstrous Rage waiting in the wings there.
And I think Percy knows that as well, so asking how many cards does Yuchen have in hand? The answer is 2. And the interesting thing about a spot like this, if you're Percy, is do I have any reason to get aggressive? And the reason I would ask that question if I were in his seat is I'm at 20. I'm seeing 2 cards a turn, and my Heartfire Hero just keeps getting larger and larger, and if you ever try to deal with that, well, we know what happens. You end up taking some damage. So Percy can elect to get aggressive, which we are seeing. Or he can elect to maybe hang back and be more conservative, but he's going to take a much more aggressive slant to this particular turn, which leads me to believe that there's some strength in hand.
Yeah, I think if you didn't have a Monstrous Rage in hand, or at least something, you absolutely are not getting aggressive. Once you have something, I do think that you do want to try to push this game over the edge before your opponent has a chance to draw anything. Of course, you are firmly in the driver's seat at this point, so it is just purely a matter of, are you scared? And I don't think Percy is scared, but I do think he knows his advantage and he is going to push it. That is a key sign of any mono red master, is understanding your spots.
There's Monstrous Rage. That's the one that makes blocking hard, and that is going to get the job done. Percy Fang is going to win game number 1 here over Yuchen Liu, the mono red master at the top of the screen, 2 wins away from a semifinals appearance here on the Sunday stage. We turn our attention to game number 2, and we're going to jump in progress here at the second turn. Looks like Hired Claw was feeling a little frisky. Got a counter on it. Going to have Percy at 17 to start things, while Percy with his own Hired Claw. And now, let's see what the follow-up's going to be.
Yeah, getting that extra counter on the Hired Claw here is really nice just because it protects it from Burst Lightning, which is one of the primary cheap removal spells that are in this deck. So just making it a 2/3 so your opponent can't just cleanly Burst Lightning it here is really nice, which is why we see a lot of mono red players prioritize just attacking and getting that counter immediately in the mirror match.
Well, let's head back over to Yuchen now. He's picked up a copy of Rockface Village.
A significantly better hand from him this game
so,
compared to the previous one. Of course, things to do. We do see that one of Twin Moss Stormbrood in the hand, so Charring Bite able to deal with the Emberheart Challenger here, if that's what Yuchen is looking for. Again, this matchup is very much about trading resources, and that Emberheart Challenger being a way to get extra cards was such a key part of Percy's game, the previous game, in terms of continuing to put Yuchen further and further behind.
So there is Charring Bite. It's going to get shuffled back in, of course. Perhaps Yuchen will see it again, and now there is a Hardfire hero, and here comes the Hired Claw. There'll be a trigger there, of course, because one or more lizards did attack, and then some more damage will be dealt as well. So I think Percy's going to fall down to 14 after that exchange. As we head back Percy's way, there comes the Hired Claw. And it looks like it's 14 up now, so we'll get these life totals updated for you in just a moment at home, as there's a Major Bane Lizard, and we'll pass the turn back over to Yuchen Liu.
Yuchen's hand is a bit awkward, but does have those 2 copies of Rockface Village, so has a way to start triggering the Valiant on the Hardfire hero. That's really nice, and the Opera Love Song can do a great job of pushing more damage across or finding more cards, depending on how the next few turns go. And notably, this is our second pre-board game. Percy does have the advantage in the matchup, being the higher seed of being on the play to begin with. So once again, for Yuchen, and I think we're going to be saying this a lot in the Day of Mirrors, it is about breaking serve. So you have to win this game on the play, but you do also have to win at least 1 game on the draw, which is a pretty big ask here.
Breaking serve in this matchup is pretty tough.
Yeah.
Pretty tough. There's Rockface Village.
Now, there have definitely been mono-red iterations in the past where the mirror match was about somebody actually being on the draw just to get cards because of how possible it was to trade resources to a point where the game stalls out for a long time.
Yeah.
And then it's that 1 extra card was actually way more valuable than having the advantage of being on the play. That is not this meta's mono red.
Yeah, I do agree that the world was different in 1989. That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do agree with that.
I don't remember that. I wasn't born yet.
Here is Opera Love Song. Gonna do a little bit of targeting, I imagine. Remember, this mode, the +2/+0, that does happen. You can target multiple creatures. We're talking about a Valiant deck here as well, so this is very powerful in this particular strategy.
Yeah, it does take 1 damage, of course, from the Mage Vein Lizard, so it comes at a very, very small cost. But with that said, clearing off the board, pushing a lot of damage through, and having another Hardfire hero as a follow-up means that with 2 Rockface Villages, the second one being in hand, I believe, he has the ability next turn to trigger both Valiants and continue pushing damage, and Percy's at 9 right now. So this game is not going to go that much longer.
Look at this mercenary, this hired claw. Gets paid to do one thing, go into the red zone.
Yeah.
Let's see what the follow-up's going to be here for Percy. Maybe a Screaming Nemesis on defense. It looks like Percy does have 4 cards. Remember, this is still a pre-sideboarded game. The first 2 are pre. The final 3 are post. And we'll get to those sideboard changes once this game does end. But for now, it looks like Yuchen Liu is going to fall down to 11. Second main. This is a Mage Main Lizard. And just going to pass the turn back. So, Hardfire Heroes are untapping here for Yuchen Liu. And partner, you did mention that second copy of Rock Face Village. That might be joining the fray here in just a moment.
Yeah, a copy of Witchstalker Frenzy drawn for Yuchen as well.
That's not
so
too bad.
has the ability to push even more damage through if he wants to use that as a removal spell, or see exactly how defensive he wants to play it. It is feeling fairly ahead already, considering the fact that Percy has drawn 2 of what is one of the worst cards in the matchup in the Mage Main Lizard. It doesn't block particularly well. It is a costly ability, especially when you're falling behind, because you're the one that typically wants to be casting spells to try to stabilize the board, and that comes at a cost to you. So not a good position to be for Percy, and I think much like Percy sniffed out the opportunity to push the aggression in the first game, this is going to be Yuchen taking the same opportunity here in the second game. And right now, I believe Yuchen has access to 8 damage represented. And I think he does actually have the ability to do 9 if he does play this Rockface Village. No, what he's lacking is a second red mana to be able to go Witchstalker Frenzy your Lizard after attacking, and then use the red mana to activate the Hired Claw. The Rockface Village only taps for red for creature spells, so unfortunately, that is not going to help you in this exact situation to push lethal across. So yeah. I do believe Yuchen is 1 point of damage short of lethal at the moment.
It's a little bit awkward, the mana in this situation, and Yuchen is trying to solve this puzzle right now of exactly how to get all of this final damage through. That's how you see the tapping and the counting that is taking place in what looks to be maybe a straightforward turn is anything but.
Yeah, I think the question for Yuchen here is, given what I haven't had, given the fact that I don't have lethal, am I just using this Witchstalker Frenzy aggressively to kill your Lizard, or am I using it defensively to kill the Hired Claw?
Well, that question just got answered. There's the Witchstalker Frenzy. Here comes the damage, and now if you're Yuchen, you're just thinking, I'm not going to die, hopefully.
Yeah, I believe this is 7 damage being dealt, assuming, of course, it is dealt.
Assume maybe a Burst Lightning here as Witchstalker Frenzy. Okay, that's going to take care of the Hired Claw.
5.
Okay, 5. Going to bring Percy down to 3. Untapping. Is there a way for Percy to steal this one on this turn?
Is there a way? Yeah, there's always a way, but it would involve, I think, an Emberheart Challenger and a Monstrous Rage, being the exact 2 cards, and something else off the top as well. I think that is the cleanest way. I do think Percy is down to just 2 cards, so I don't think it's easy.
No, I don't think it's likely.
Yeah,
but it could happen.
It could happen.
Here's 4 mana.
Another.
The Offspring here with the Manifold Mouse.
Pass.
And just going to pass the turn back and playing a little defensive in the face of Heartfire Hero. Never easy.
Yeah, and I do believe Yuchen can now go second Rockface Village, double activate the heroes, and force double chumps from Percy. He can't clear either of them off, so it is going to be a matter of just blocking. The big issue with that, and the thing that Yuchen has to consider, is once there is 1 Manifold Mouse left alive, the fear of double strike actually makes losing the game a lot more possible, especially with a Soulstone Sanctuary there. in the land area. So that is something that Yuchen has to be aware of when making that a pseudo all-in attack. And maybe a reason that he would be eyeing this Soulstone Sanctuary instead is if I activate this, that's a vigilance attacker.
Sure.
So it will also be left back as a blocker.
Well, there's a mountain. And now here is the Soulstone Sanctuary, as you did mention. Very astute. And
Combat.
time for combat. Here they come.
Yeah, so the Soulstone Sanctuary has to get blocked. At least one of the Heartfire heroes has to get blocked.
Yep.
And either they both have to get chumped, or one is chumped and you're not removing the other one because you would die.
So there is Hired Claw blocking Sanctuary. Looks like the copy of Manifold Mouse is going to be blocking one of the copies of Heartfire Hero. And you heard Percy say, I'm thinking, these are my blocks, and now damage is going to resolve.
Nope.
Down to 1. Is Percy able to actually steal this somehow, even when there's a blocker back on defense?
Double Monstrous Rage. Emberheart Challenger Monstrous Rage again.
Uh-oh.
Target.
Okay, trigger. What's this? Heartfire Hero.
Will not do it, I
Double
believe.
strike.
Double strike.
Yeah, I think even with a Monstrous Rage here, Yuchen is always blocking and saying, do your worst.
There's a block.
Damage.
All right. Heartfire Hero post. And Magebane Lizard.
Go.
Okay,
We still play on here, yeah?
we still play on, and I do believe we're in a similar situation if Yuchen doesn't find a Burst Lightning or something here, which is going to be Screaming Nemesis.
That makes it a lot easier.
That makes it
Bingo.
trivial. Is I will attack you with Screaming Nemesis.
Yep. You're going to have to block it with something, and then that damage is going straight to the face. Yuchen Liu is going to tie things up here over Percy Fang. It's 1-1 as they get ready here for game number 3 at Pro Tour Final Fantasy. Red Mirror sideboarding. This should be fun as we're going to watch Percy start things off. Now, you mentioned the Magebane Lizard not particularly good in this matchup. Percy agrees. Those are the 4 cards that have been taken out in favor of 3 Torch the Tower and a Sunspire Lynx. For Yuchen Liu, the 3 Magebane Lizards are gone, along with a copy of Opera Love Song. In came a Witch Doctor Frenzy, an Obliterating Bolt, and 2 copies of Torch the Tower. So straight up, just more interaction for both players.
Yeah, more interaction minus the bad cards. I think, you know, the old adage of minus bad cards plus good cards has never been more true than this exact matchup where they only have so few bad cards and only so few good cards to bring in. I would say bringing in the Sunspine Lynx from Percy is actually not ideal, not something that you're overly excited by, but looking at his sideboard, because we saw a pretty straightforward build from him, that's what he had access to.
We're going to head back over to Yuchen Liu now. Excuse me, we're going to head over to Percy. Rockface Village. Now there's the Hired Claw. Looks like 2 damage is going to come across.
18.
And now the follow-up is a Manifold Mouse. We're going to head back over to Percy. Excuse me, we're heading over to Yuchen. I'm going to get this right one of these days.
Eventually.
First time in the booth.
Yeah,
You get it.
we've got some time.
Yeah, you get it.
You've been out of the game for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, looking at Yuchen's hand, I do believe I see a Monstrous Rage and at least 1 Burst Lightning, a Heartfire Hero, an Emberheart Challenger. Wouldn't be surprised to see something like a Heartfire Hero plus Burst Lightning turn here, getting rid of the scary Double Strike Enabler as well as the Valiant Enabler. What you really don't want to see is passing in this spot and then having Percy just slam an Emberheart Challenger on the board and be able to trigger it for free. So this is the cleanest line of play, and you still have a very powerful hand. So I think Yuchen is not unhappy with this spot.
Oh, I wouldn't be thrilled about seeing Screaming Nemesis on this side of the battlefield in the Red Mirror. That one is quite a doozy. So Percy off to a really nice start here. 1 drop, 2 drop, 3 drop.
And it is the 3 drop.
Yes, it is. So we're going to head back Yuchen Liu's way.
So Rockface Village, Emberheart Challenger, Monstrous Rage Mountain, and 1 card that I can't make out that I'm guessing might be Obliterating Bolt. Of course, the damage-based removal is still very awkward in this matchup just because you really don't want to be damaging Screaming Nemesis at all, let alone overkilling it with 4 damage. I think this is a spot where Yuchen may want to just race, using the Monstrous Rage aggressively here and just saying, all right, let's race. You have a Screaming Nemesis. My life is already difficult, so let's send the damage across.
Well, sending the damage is what's going to happen here. So Yuchen agrees with you. Everybody into the red zone. Monstrous Rage providing a lot of damage here as
10?
well.
Yeah.
And that's 10 points of damage, and Percy's falling down to 8. So now the question is, will Percy have to take maybe a more defensive slant to this game?
Yeah, Percy lacking the snowball aspects of the deck, which is the mice. The Hired Claw is good. It does a lot of work. The Screaming Nemesis is excellent. But in terms of how you explode out of gates, how you present that overwhelming amount of damage in a turn, a lot of the time it does involve the Valiant ability. It does involve the Manifold Mouse. It does involve just having some of these synergistic pieces of the deck, and that's what Percy's lacking right now. So 3 cards in hand, of course, he was on the play, but he is now on the back foot, and if he doesn't have an ability to either set up a lethal while surviving or finish the game right now, at least the Screaming Nemesis is staying back on blocks for sure.
Hired Claw going to get busy. Yuchen going to fall down to 11. Maybe another Screaming Nemesis on defense.
I feel like that's the name of the game.
Oh, yeah. This is where things can get maybe a little wonky. So we'll see exactly what Yuchen is able to do here and what the draw step yields.
Yeah, I do think there is an obliterating
sweat. Let's go.
Look, I love Magic players. I love that they speak our language.
Yes.
If I can make out what's in your hand easily, you are not giving me the show I want. Okay, so has the ability to start with Rockface Village on Emberheart Challenger. I think Yuchen's hand is 2 lands and an Obliterating Bolt, if I'm seeing correctly. So the 2 mountains not offering much help, so you start with getting your Valiant trigger, seeing what your top card is, deciding from there. You really don't want to fire off an Obliterating Bolt at one of these Screaming Nemesises. It's not doing a great job, and it's not going to push damage across the way you would like. So I think that is the initial question, but also there is going to be a point where if Percy has a 3rd Screaming Nemesis, Yuchen might just get locked out of the game because you don't have good attacks or blocks at some point.
A lot for Yuchen to think about on this turn. Screaming Nemesis is quite difficult to work through in the red beer. And if you get this decision wrong, you could effectively die out of nowhere. So this is one very complicated math problem, to say the least.
Yeah, and fortunately for Yuchen, and for Percy, I would say, playing mono red as a deck in general is one big math problem.
Yes, it is.
Every game is about counting to 20 and finding the most creative ways to get there, or in some cases 30, though Screaming Nemesis does a good job of stopping that. So one big math problem, not an issue for Yuchen, as he has been playing mono red for quite a while, very accomplished in doing this sort of math.
So step 1 looks like Rockface Village. Well, it wants to target something.
Yeah, he's still doing math. He's not aggressively saying it's hard for here this place.
Yeah.
He is just figuring out, do I need this extra 2 power on the Heartfire hero? Is that what helps me push lethal across?
Okay, well, there's the answer to that question as far as the Rockfire Village is concerned. Next is playing a mountain. Okay.
You just attacking it with everything.
It's easier than it sounds.
Just do it. What's the worst that can happen?
Easier than it looks, excuse me.
Yeah, I think he may just be firing off an Obliterating Bolt and going for an attack. So much of this math is also just trying to predict whether your opponent's choices are forced or whether they have the agency to make decisions. If their decisions are forced, that's, not easy, but easier.
Easier, yeah.
Right? But as soon as they have the ability to make choices, then everything becomes so much more complicated. When you use this obliterating bolt, where is the Screaming Nemesis damage going? Does it have to go to my creature, or can it go to my face?
Yep.
How do I beat that?
Oh, Hired Claw. Okay, let's go.
Yeah, just getting the prowess on the Emberheart Challenger, not giving your opponent any damage. Saying that at the very least, you are putting Screaming Nemesis in front of my Emberheart Challenger and trading with it.
Yep.
And then the Heartfire Hero becomes a big problem.
Yeah, it becomes its own question.
It is the abyss that you cannot clear off unless you exile it. And there are ways to exile it, of course. We are in the post-board game, so Percy did bring in 3 copies of Torch the Tower, I believe, so is able to exile the Heartfire Hero.
All right, it looks like... Looks like Screaming Nemesis is going to jump in front of Emberheart Challenger. This is what we like to call a temporary block.
Yeah.
We're lining them up, figure out exactly what we want to do before we commit to anything. Oh, interesting. Okay.
5, I go to 3.
All right, so Nemesis.
This, I will target you.
All right, Percy's going to send it upstairs.
All right.
Down to
3,
8.
8. Can't gain life.
Right there's
1 Nemesis.
Okay.
And remember, this was Percy's game on the play. So Yuchen is on the verge of accomplishing the all-important first point.
That's a very, very good point. Someone breaking serve in this matchup. Can it be done? That's a Hired Claw.
That's not how you want to start things off. That Hard Claw is essentially a forced block on the Heartfire Hero.
Yep.
Because you cannot kill that Heartfire Hero anymore. That cannot die.
Now that dies, you die.
Yeah, just like that.
Yeah.
Yuchen's hand, I believe, is just a mountain. So that's a blank. Yuchen is working with the resources he has here, plus the top of his deck.
I'm curious what Percy's working with. 3 cards over there.
None of them lands, as far as we know. He hasn't been deploying them.
The big question right now. 3 cards feels like a lot in this situation, and none of them are lands. That means that, hypothetically, they are spells. And now the question is, what are they? And are any of them particularly good at managing a Heartfire Hero?
Yeah, I kind of think that at least one of the cards in Percy's hand might be a Burst Lightning. That's the gut feeling I've got right now.
Okay.
One thing I would love is if we could just, dissect this game with asking Yuchen Liu almost like a confessional. What do you think is in Percy's hand at this exact moment? Like, show him this footage after the fact and be like, what was going through your mind at this point?
Pass.
All right, Percy's finally going to pass the turn back. Yuchen is very quickly untapping. Picked up a copy of Opera Love Song.
It's a pretty good draw.
There's a trigger. Make the Heartfire here a little bit larger. And Yuchen is taking this turn so quickly, it almost feels like it's easy. Right?
I don't think it's that easy.
He's making it certainly seem like it's easy given how quickly these game actions have taken place. And maybe it is. We're going to find out one way or the other because we're in the red zone now.
Now, one thing that Yuchen could do is actually use Opera Love Song to buff one of his opponent's creatures, potentially. But as things stand, that's not something that he needs to do, and that is just going to be game.
That is game indeed. Opera Love Song is going to help put a wrap on this one, and Yuchen Liu has just broken serve and is up 2-1 over Percy Fang. Game number 4. Let's do it to it. We'll see if Percy Fang on the play can tie this one up. This is a mountain, and that is a Hardfire Hero.
Mulligan to 6 for Percy. Not ideal, but of course you have to make the most of what you have here, and this is an all-important game for you because once you win this, Yuchen will be on the play for game 5, excuse me. And that is still a very large hill that Percy has to climb at that point.
Torch the Tower took care of the first Hardfire Hero. The second one is still hanging out, at least for right now.
Yeah, I do see a Charring Bite as well as another copy of Torch the Tower, Screaming Nemesis, Burst Lightning, Monstrous Rage, and I think one creature might be Emberheart Challenger, if I'm not mistaken.
I think you're correct on that one.
So, pretty strong hand from Yuchen. Sort of has a lot of bases covered in removal, threats, and the ability to exile these Hardfire heroes, so not even taking much damage. The question is, which removal spell do you want to use in which spot, and whether you want to let Percy, who is in a mulligan position on the play, low on cards, low on resources, have any form of damage, or whether you want to make the mana inefficient play here of just using another Torch to the Tower and passing the turn. I think I like mana efficiency at the cost of one potential damage here.
It's supposed to be C here. Yes. I guess I don't have a way to edit it. I'll do it.
All right, Hardfire Hero number 2 down. This one's actually going to deal some damage because it's not exiled via the removal spell. And now the dragon will get shuffled back into the deck here for Yuchen. So, Percy, first 2 threats have been managed. We'll see what the third one is, assuming one's coming next turn.
Yeah, I think Percy, in an ideal world, would either have Emberheart Challenger into a trigger here or a Screaming Nemesis.
There's a land. This is a Manifold Mouse. And we're going to head back over to Yuchen. Monstrous Rage, the draw.
All things considered, not the best draw. You really want to be using those on the Emberheart Challenger, but that would require you to have a third land, and that is not something that Yuchen has access to right now. I think given that, we are going to see him continue playing things slow and just removing every creature that Percy puts into play. Ultimately, Percy is down on cards. Percy only has 2 cards left in hand, I believe, thanks to that mulligan to 6, and that means that Yuchen can just continue playing this aggressively.
We're going to see an upkeep copy of Burst Lightning. I like this here. Here's a Monstrous Rage. Now there's a Torch the Tower. A little 2 for 2 exchange, but a favorable one there, excuse me, for Yuchen Liu.
So that is exiled thanks to the Torch to the Tower. And got one of Percy's lands, or, you know, mana, out of it. So now Percy is even more limited in what he's able to do this turn.
This is another copy of Manifold Mouse, and we're going to head back over to Yuchen Liu, who's picked up a copy of Hardfire Hero.
Pretty great draw, actually.
Yeah, not too bad at all.
Yeah, what you really want to do is not put out that Emberheart Challenger without the ability to Monstrous Rage in a lot of situations. So the Hardfire Hero was a way to do that, but if you're identifying the Percy is low on resources and you want to attack that, even if that involves Percy having a way to remove this Emberheart Challenger, this is a good way to do so, because if you untap with his Emberheart Challenger, I think Yuchen identifies that he's pretty close to winning the game.
Double strike in 4. Yes.
Double strike in for 4.
15. Yes.
And now there is a Burst Lightning to take care of the Challenger. So Percy was able to get a couple of points of damage through. Opera Love Song added to the hand now, it looks like. We already know about the Hardfire Hero and the copy of at least one Monstrous Rage there for Yuchen. So now there is the hero. This is a Rage right away. And now pass the turn back.
There's a counter on that.
Indeed.
Of course. And this is important too, because even if your opponent has a Torch to the Tower now, they do have to bargain it to deal with this Hardfire Hero thanks to that monster roll, as well as the +1/+1 counter. So now you have a 3/3. Your opponent can't remove it easily, and you're happy to trade it here.
Here comes a double striker. Remember, this time, no Rockface Village activation.
Yeah, so just a 1 power double striker, and I believe
Strike? Yes.
one of the cards in Percy's hand is a Screaming Nemesis. The other is this Torch the Tower.
Okay, well, Torch Tower's going to resolve. Exile will take place as well. It's double strike, no trample, though, so no damage will get through. We're going to head back over to Yuchen Liu.
Run it back.
Could be same exact play. This. Now, this time, obviously, Percy has mana available, where last time that was not the case, so might not be as safe of a play.
Yeah, I don't think there's any reason to use the Monstrous Rage here with your opponent already representing mana unless you want to try to do it while they haven't drawn an extra card. I think, despite all that, it is more appealing for Yuchen to just pass. Thinking about using it on Percy's upkeep instead here, so if Percy has something, his mana is being taxed during his turn,
Sure.
while still doing it before Percy draws the extra card, which is just purely maximizing versus minimizing probabilities of having the removal spell versus drawing the removal spell.
There's a Screaming Nemesis.
Double strike. Yes.
And double strike itself.
4 cards again? 3? 3.
Here comes an attack for 3.
I think in Yuchen's spot, I am happy trading here. Yes, I take some damage, and that's fine, but you get to clear off Percy's board, and I think that is something that you are interested in this spot.
Both die and 5 you.
All right, so 5 goes upstairs. Hardfire Hero
5 out of 13. Yes.
goes upstairs. Okay, let's head back. It's 13 to 10. Big draw. That'll work. Glittering Bolt. All right, battlefields are clear. Percy with, looks like 1 card. Let's make it a second one here. I'm just going to pass the turn back. This is a spot where a card like Opera Love Song can be very useful as well.
And I think you will fire that off on Percy's end step
Correct.
rather than your main phase. You have until the end of that turn, but Percy takes the opportunity to find another Screaming Nemesis. And
Down to 7.
I think he is going to probably win this game at this point.
Well, we'll see. Look, and there's a Screaming Nemesis on defense, which is certainly interesting. Draw step there. Play this. Play that. That's definitely on defense. Pass the turn back. Will Yuchen Liu have the opportunity to trade with Screaming Nemesis?
Has another Screaming Nemesis in hand that we know about. Of course, Percy does not.
Block.
Yeah,
So,
that is going to be game. I
Yeah,
believe.
that's a monstrous rage, everybody.
4.
Damage target this.
Trigger. Yes.
Let's see what this is. Response to the trigger. Ooh, Witchstalker Frenzy.
Oh,
Gonna
yeah.
5 you and kill you. So Percy Fang is going to win this game and not the match just yet because we are about to head to the 2 best words in Magic. Game 5.
Game 5 for it all here, and it is Yuchen on the play, so that successful breaking a serve earlier on in the match will come back to reward him here, and it's a question of,
Charlie started
are both players working with 7 here?
Yuchen is, and as an aggro aficionado, there is no better feeling than being on the play with an aggro deck in a game that matters.
Oh, absolutely not. I'm not an aggro aficionado, but I'm going to take your word for it.
This is the dream right here, baby.
Yep. Once again, Yuchen has one of those hands which looks pretty good, slightly awkward because of the mana stumble. Wouldn't be surprised to see things start off here with just an attack from the Hard Claw. Though you could, if you are planning on deploying the Emberheart Challenger this turn, just play it and send in everybody.
Decisions as early as turn number 2. Burst? Interesting.
It's definitely the most mana inefficient of the plays, but it does get rid of your opponent's creature and leave you the ability to still have Torch the Tower up.
Okay.
So potentially answering something on Percy's turn as well, and then untapping to resolve something.
Sure. There's Rockface Village. This is a Hired Claw. Do you dare torch now?
I think you fire off another Burst Lightning just because, of course, torches you do want to reserve for Heartfire Hero when you can help it. That is the important creature to exile.
Iron Claw.
This is the big issue that Yuchen has been facing for the past 2 games is you don't need that much mana to operate as mono red, but you do really want that 3rd land just to have the ability to go, for example, Emberheart Challenger, targeted, for example, being able to cast Screaming Nemesis, and that's something that Yuchen struggled with for too long the previous game and may be stumbling with again this game.
Yes, indeed. Let's see. Last time we saw Burst Lightning on the Hired Claw. This time,
Might just be another Hired Claw and attack, get 2 triggers, put the onus on Percy to try to pump or just block and take the 2, and then you get to pass cleanly.
all right, 2 triggers from Hired Claw.
4 in hand.
And Hired Claw's going to block.
Damage.
Burst. All right.
Yeah, now that the damage is on, hey, Yuchen is saying, do you want a Monstrous Rage? Go ahead. Your creature's still dying, and Monstrous Rage is not helping you in combat.
This is Manifold Mouse.
Not that great here.
Now there's the 3rd land.
All right.
There's
Now
the 3rd
Yuchen is
land.
cooking.
Okay.
Play the Emberheart Challenger, attack with everything.
Combat.
They have your block.
Squad.
14 on
Triggers from the claws. Arr, arr.
2 damage dealt. Once again, this is the beauty of that 3rd land is with that copy of Torch the Tower in hand, if Percy goes for a block into Monstrous Rage, you can blow it out. If Percy goes for a block, you get to just pass. And if Percy ever tries to get aggressive, you have the potential answer.
Well, there's the block.
Yeah. Block.
Rage or Frenzy? It'll be Frenzy. Now, here's an interesting question. Do you want to torch the tower?
Yeah, on the one hand, Yuchen now has a clean opportunity to deal with the Manifold Mouse. On the other, do you want to use Torch the Tower on Manifold Mouse?
Yeah. The answer is no. All right. Couple points of damage, and okay, there's a torch.
Yeah. Timing didn't matter using it there or not.
Yes.
And draw. Percy is the one with all the cards. Oh, just pass. Oh, boy. All right. Screaming.
Oh.
Giddy up, let's go. Triggers.
11. And then 5 to a 6.
Oh, going to 6 in the face of a Screaming Nemesis is absolutely brutal. Absolutely brutal.
Has the Soulstone Sanctuary, excuse me, turned into a creature on the end step, can play Manifold Mouse here, for example, just go for maximum damage, but there is no double strike to be found here, so
7? Yes.
just pushing some damage across and having a blocker may be the end of it here for Percy, and it's saying, hopefully you have nothing.
I mean, I will give Yuchen a ton of credit here. He has played beautifully around potential copies of Monstrous Rage.
It's just been fantastic.
Done a really nice job here.
Combat.
You attack with everything. You get 2 higher claw triggers. Percy goes to 4. The Screaming Nemesis has to be dealt with in some way, or is getting 3 across. And as things stand, Percy has to have something, and he doesn't.
Yuchen Liu is going to win game number 5 and this match here over Percy Fang. On to the semifinals he goes. Mono Red obviously moving on because that's all that it could do, but it's Yuchen Liu, the one that's doing it.
Yeah, I think we've seen the importance of breaking serve in both of the matches that we've cast so far. Of course, that is going to be the name of the game in probably every single match today, just because of the nature of these red decks against each other. But every time, the person that has broken serve has ultimately come out ahead. And that's been really impressive to see, especially from Yuchen, who just played that 5th game, and the whole match just impeccably, in my opinion.
Needed that third land, finally found it, and played around Monstrous Rage beautifully. So bravo to Yuchen Liu. We're going to see more of him a little bit further down the road. For right now, we're going to take a short break. We got one more match to bring you from our quarterfinals here in Las Vegas. Ian Robb, Christian Baker. It's an Is It Prowess mirror right after this.